I'm Kira Cleveland, and this is Human Intelligence. With my co-host, Ned Hayes, we talk about the importance of human creativity in the age of AI. Welcome to the future.
The torment nexus it's a trope, it's a joke actually, an inside baseball kind of joke, where someone is writing and they say, this is a cautionary tale about the invention of the torment nexus. And the next thing you see is someone saying, oh, I'm so happy I've ushered in the future. The torment nexus is here. I have invented it. So
terrible. Yeah.
And meanwhile, all the science fiction authors and readers are going, that was not what we wanted.
Human Intelligence is excited to welcome Nisi Shawl to the show today. They are a multiple award-winning author, co-author and editor of more than a dozen books of speculative fiction and nonfiction, including The Standard Text on Diverse Representation, writing The Other. Nisi is a longtime journalist, a prolific writer of short stories. Her best-known novel is the Nebula Award finalist, Everfair. And recently she also produced a sequel to Everfair called Kinning. Other books include the middle grade fantasy novel, Speculation, and the Day and Night books of Mardo Fox, a beat-era fantasy novella. They have edited New Sons 2, original speculative fiction by people of color. Nisi Shawl has guest lectured at Duke, Spelman College, Sarah Lawrence, the University of Washington, and they currently teach at Literary Arts here in Portland. For over 2 decades, they have served on the boards of Clarion West Writers Workshop and the Carl Brandon Society. We are very excited to welcome Nisi to the show today. Welcome to the show, Nisi.
Oh, well, thank you. The first thing I should say, though, is that if you want to be pleasing to me, you will use the pronouns they and them.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for being clear with us about that. I did want to ask a question about, as we define ourselves in the world, and this ties right into pronouns, and as we define ourselves, do you feel like writers have been part of that momentum towards helping people find self-definition?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, well, obviously, I'm going to say that because I'm a writer, and it's certainly how I have found a definition for myself is by writing. Although singing and composing also played a part in theater and yeah, but mostly writing because that is the easiest way for me to tell stories, and I find myself I am a story, and all the people around me are stories. I'm surrounded by stories.
The concept, I am a story. Why does it matter to tell our stories as human beings?
Well, one of the things that I said when I saw my youngest niece, Aaliyah, graduating is that we need to tell our own stories because other people will tell them for us if we don't tell our own. And those stories will not be completely correct, strictly correct. So having like these algorithms tell our story is going to be way, way off. They're going to repeat things that match what they are structured to see. That's all.
That's actually a really interesting perspective. A lot of times we think of telling our story to family or friends, it's that small, tight circle. But in a digital age where so much of our story is online, that's interesting to think that if somebody was like, tell me the story of Kira Cleveland, AI may actually try to summarize me.
Oh, yeah.
And I may not be the full author of my story out in the world. So it's interesting to consider that telling your story gives you agency. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am immediately thinking of all the people who have posted online versions of their own stories that they picked up from so-called AI, from large language models. They have pets that don't exist. They have jobs that they've never held. And these are all plausible, but they're not true.
Yeah. Well, I know when we were talking before we started the episode, you mentioned that Wikipedia had picked up something that was inaccurate about you. And so then when you take that corpus of data and then you train AI on it, the inaccuracies are magnified, right?
Oh, yeah.
Amplified even further. Yeah. So you've mentioned how it's important to define your own story. I'm curious if you could tell us about what writers or what stories have inspired you, both as a writer and as a person.
So, when I talk about inspiration, there's positive inspiration and there's negative inspiration, right? There's positive inspiration, like I would love to write as intimately and as involvingly as Colette,
Mhm.
who draws people into the stories that she tells or has told. There are plenty of inspirations all around of that sort. Gwyneth Jones is one. Samuel Delaney is a big one for me. There are a ton. I like to tell people that when I wrote Everfair, one of the inspirations for its structure was Middlemarch by George Eliot, which
Mhm.
you would not think of that as like an inspiration for an alternate history science fiction novel fantasy thing, but that's what that's where I got the structure. Then there's negative inspirations, such as famously Octavia Butler had with she watched a movie called Devil Girl from Mars, and
Devil Girl from Mars. I'm sorry. I'm just stopping on that title. What a title.
I have seen that movie, and her takeaway was, "This is terrible. I could write better than this. Anybody could write better than this. I could write better than this and get paid." Uh,
Yes.
so those kinds of inspirations also exist. I'm not going to name anybody in particular. No naming, shaming, blaming here. But yeah, that does play a part too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and I do like the distinction between positive and negative inspiration. I think that's, really beneficial to make that distinction. You were friends with Octavia Butler, right?
I was, yeah. We would go shopping together, eat at restaurants, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
can you tell us more about her and
uh,
that friendship?
I don't know what to say. She was someone who affected the people around her deeply, and she knew it.
Mm,
And
Mm.
I
mhm.
think she got used to it, but I don't think that she ever really believed in herself the way that other people believed in her. Just she knew that people did. So I liken her sometimes to Mount Rainier because she made her own weather. She basically was like, she had a good view of what was going on around her, and she used it to make her story available, accessible, and meaningful to other people. Yeah.
Well, so one thing that I find really interesting about Octavia Butler's work, and we could spend hours and days talking about her work,
Right.
but is the predictions, they aren't really predictions. The way that she wrote Parable of the Sower and that whole series that are set in uh, aspects of the America we're now living through.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you could comment on her ability to see some of this dystopian future that we're now experiencing.
Well, she had the habit of listening to NPR every morning.
Mm.
And she used that as the basis of her extrapolation. And I will warn you that she was always trying to make it more palatable. She was always trying to make it what she said more positive. And so I would try and do that too. But we're in this dystopia, but it's the one that she tried to soften. We're
Got
in
it. Well,
this
what I find
soft.
fascinating about Octavia Butler and about your work is that it is a counterpoint, and I say this as a white male writer, but it's a counterpoint to the white males who have too often dominated literature, that now we have stories that are too often ignored. And Octavia Butler was foregrounding people's voices that had not been part of the science fiction canon in a big way. And she was not the only one writing at that time, but she opened the door for a lot of voices, I think.
I think so. I think so. People often ask if she was an inspiration to me. And I am not someone who wanted to write like Octavia Butler. I am someone who has always wanted to write like Delaney. And but there were certain things that I took away from her, and mainly they were the fearlessness
Mm.
and the commitment to doing it as I saw fit. And that was an integral part of why she was foregrounding people who were not previously foregrounded, was because she wanted to zero in on the truth that she saw. So that gave me courage to do the same.
That's beautiful. And, just around your courage and your work, not to make it too simplistic, but some critics have talked about how your book Everfair as is almost a spiritual prequel to the Wakanda that we saw in the Marvel movies, where Black Panther comes from a technologically advanced scientific culture based in Africa. Is that a fair assessment?
I had not heard that before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had not. And then there is the sequel, Kinning, which, the sequel to Everfair takes place a lot of different places. It's not necessarily saying, we will have this African center of technology. It's more global. So I'm not sure that that is a fair assessment. I can tell you that my publisher was not interested in a sequel until the Black Panther movies came out.
Really?
Fascinating.
Yeah, so in a way, the Wakanda was a spiritual predecessor of the sequels to Everfair, if that makes sense.
Oh, interesting. So it was kind of that forcing function. It really brought
Yes.
interest and buy-in. There was a lot of resonance with that storyline within Wakanda that seemed pretty powerful to people at the time. And I imagine then that sequel was really well received as well. Is that what you found?
No,
No? Oh, sorry.
no, that's okay. A lot of people haven't read the sequel, and that I think is the fate of sequels, right?
Oh,
Um, yeah, yeah. Usually you'll have like, if you have like, 8,000 people read one, then you'll have like 6,000 people or 5,000 people read two. And I am now contemplating a third one. I don't know. There might be further fall off. I don't know why. Why? Did either of you read the sequel? No, of course not.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. But let's talk about a related domain, which is science fiction that is tied into African heritage, which is such a broad field now, right? Uh,
Right.
right. And so I'm just curious. Some people have also called you an Afrofuturist. Do you think that's even a useful term anymore?
It's the thing with words like Afrofuturist is they get changed as they are used.
Yeah.
So people will say Afrofuturist, but my stuff was not in the future.
Maybe
Eh,
it was in an alternative past, right?
Yeah, I actually call it Afro retrofuturism because steampunk sometimes calls itself retrofuturism.
Mhm.
So Afro retrofuturism, really hard to say, but and then we have the whole controversy with Nnedi Okorafor saying, no, I'm not writing Afrofuturism because I'm writing African futurism.
Mm.
Um, so then there are people who say, well, let's call it the Black Fantastic because that includes fantasy elements. And, what is fantasy? What is science? These are all things that are like pulling at that definition in different directions. And it's giving way to the pressure in some ways and it's elastic in others. We'll see how it turns out.
Right. And as we all know, as we discussed at the beginning, a particular label can not be very helpful. It can box you in instead of freeing you. And so putting a label on something may not always be beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's helpful if you're shelving in a bookstore, but that's about it.
Yeah. So I'd like to turn our attention to something that we've all been thinking about, which is the future that we're now living in. Octavia Butler saw some of this coming, but not all of it. And I wanted to mention, as a kind of prelude to that discussion, the William Gibson quote that the future is already here, it's distributed unevenly.
Yeah.
So you nodded, Nisi. Do you want to tell us more about what that kind of quote means in this context?
Well, I often hear of it in terms of class.
Mm-hmm.
Wealthy people are living in a different future than poor people. But it is true that it's significant in terms of regions. If you are living, like, say, as a herder in East Africa, you have a cell phone, but you're also, like, maybe not wearing the same shoes that protect your feet as someone in Belgium, for instance. So you have different aspects of the future showing up and being the highest values in different areas. So there
Mm-hmm.
is that. There are people who accidentally are given access to different kinds of future. I'm thinking in this case of people who are test subjects for medical applications. Or I have a friend who lives in Albania, and she has access to injections of medical technology as opposed to oral swallowing pills. And I have a friend who's in Thailand receiving treatments for cancer, for all different kinds of cancer. And again, what's available to her is different than what would be available to me. So yeah,
Right.
it's everywhere and it's different.
Right, right. And as we've seen with that, like the future is unevenly distributed, to your point, I think the future looks different depending on where you are on the socioeconomic stratum and where you are in the world. Like if you're in the global south, many jobs are actually sitting in a data center watching horrific scenes of abuse in order to tune Meta's algorithms, right? And
Yeah,
so if that's your future, that's not a very pleasant future, just so that like my 12-year-old can sit here and not see somebody decapitated here in the US. So
right.
the future has different impacts on those two different populations.
Even though it's the same event, it's hitting differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of someone, this is probably tangential, who was trying to get me to take a job training AI.
Mm.
And I thought, well, that is a future, and I am not participating in that.
My goodness. Well, and I love that clarity. And actually, that ties in perfectly with my next question. As a science fiction writer, what are your thoughts as you see technologists today emulating the futuristic science fiction scenarios they've read about in books and seen in movies?
I don't know that they have read about them in books. So are y'all familiar with the trope of the torment nexus?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But for those in our audience who are not,
Yes.
the torment nexus is it's a trope. It's a joke, actually, an inside baseball kind of joke, where someone is writing and they say, "This is a cautionary tale about the invention of the torment nexus."
Hmm.
And the next thing you see is someone saying, "Oh, I'm so happy I've, like, ushered in the future. The torment nexus is here. I have invented it." So
Terrible. Yeah.
and meanwhile, all the science fiction authors and readers are going, that was not what we wanted. That was not what we were aiming for. But, if you read the literature, you would understand that. If you scraped the literature, you would simply come up with a term, the term torment nexus, and, what it stood for, and you would just try to replicate it. So Yeah, actually, probably about 10 years ago, I'm thinking, oh, a reality show host is running for president. I actually remember reading in the 70s all this literature about reality shows and, what was going on in the background of those stories, the world that those stories took place in was a horrible world. It was destructive of every human value. It was a police state, basically. Did people not pick up on that? Apparently not. Uh,
Yeah. Well, and you said earlier in this conversation that you had an opportunity to train AI and you did not want to be part of that future, that experience. Why not?
Well, for one thing, the materials that are used to train it would be stolen. They would be part of like this content pool that people assume just sort of seeps up from the noosphere naturally, and that is untrue. And for another thing, I actually think that AI is not helpful as a creator. I actually
Mhm.
find that why I am able to write as well as I do, why I am able to see the things that I need to do to make my writing better is because I have spent time doing the so-called grunt work that proponents of AI assume I want to offload. Um,
Mm.
and no, actually, figuring out the difference between pretend and contend, that is how I learned to be a better writer, and that is how I it's fractal. It
Yeah.
spreads out, into my work, into, sentences, paragraphs, pages, chapters, scenes, it's not something that you just say, "Here, do that," and then get back to me. It's all
Right. I love that metaphor of it's fractal. That phrase is going to stay with me because what you're pointing to is the fact that the process is the point. It's not
yes.
the artifact, it's the experience of actually creating that is the reason we write.
Yes, absolutely. It's the reason that I write. I actually have talked with several other writers about this, and some of us outline and some of us do not. But those of us who outline and those of us who do not, those of us who are just kind of writing by the seat of our pantsers, so to speak,
Yeah.
we're all learning about what we're talking about as we go, word by word, syllable by syllable. We're learning what we are trying to convey.
So what concerns do you have in this, age of AI for newer writers and how it's going to impact their writing and writing capabilities?
Well, I honestly have not talked to anyone who is using it seriously. And that that could be a whole other conversation, right? The fact
Yeah.
that people are not really picking up on this so-called benefit. But one thing that I see is that people are having their careers stopped and blocked because magazines are concerned that what they've written is AI based, and the magazines don't want to promote it either. So people who are unknown, who are just getting started with their writing careers, they've got to prove they're human.
Mhm.
and
And do
and
you
this
Yeah.
is
think there's an
hard.
effective tool out there for that right now?
Well, that would be you guys, right?
That's our hope. That's our hope. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't see anything else. The only other thing is, if I, as a teacher, can vouch for someone's humanity, but then
Mhm.
I'm not even. Am I going to say everything that they have sent you is the product of their work, I can't prove that.
Absolutely. It's a
Right.
complex problem that we're now facing in this world and in this age. But, I think that's one thing that's been interesting to watch the use of AI, the struggles with AI and having to prove you're human. In the beginning, there were so many things that would feed content to AI and be like, did you write this? Right. And, right, exactly, it's laughable. And over the years, we've understood how it's laughable, because it's not accurate. And that's where our commitment to looking at the human pattern, because there is a pattern in creating that is distinct to humans, has really come in to
Oh,
to help artists defend themselves.
there's a
Mhm.
pattern. I'm glad to hear that. What is it?
Well, so what's fascinating about that, just to add a little bit more color to what
Mhm.
Kira said, is that the human pattern is, as you said, almost a fractal. There are many different ways to get there, but AI has a singular mode. And so you can see if somebody is deviating from that singular mode, they're more than likely human because they take action in a variety of different ways. And AI just has one way of doing it. So I won't get into all the things under the hood, but we can understand the pattern of revision, the pattern of typing, the way somebody constructs something, and the way somebody even constructs photos or digital art. We have patented technology that can understand that as being a human type pattern. And it's extremely cost intensive for a machine to try to replicate that pattern. A machine could do it, but if you want to pay $5,000 for your 12-page paper, go for it.
Well, and I bet you some people will,
Yeah,
honestly.
There's always the outliers, but,
yeah.
for the masses, yeah.
Well, the other thing that you touched on that's so important is that as you use AI, your capacity to learn, I think, degrades. And there have actually been studies that show that your cognitive engagement with ideas diminishes when you just press a button and get some paragraphs out.
Yeah, I can see that. And I would say that we really need to look into how people learn and how people understand. I believe there are studies that also contrast using keyboards to write and using like a stylus, a pen, or an electronic stylus. It seems to engage different parts of your brain because your brain responds to this feedback is coming in this kind of motion as opposed to this kind of motion. So yeah, that is important. And learning to see all these different choices ahead of you and decide which one best serves you and why it best serves you, that is all part of learning how to write and learning how to create.
So, kind of playing around with that, you even create a distinction between those who outline and those who do not. But what are some elements in your creative process that really put you in that state of flow or creativity or are important to you?
I actually do a lot with tapping into a spiritual reservoir. Um,
Ooh, tell us about
I
that.
Yeah, I pray there. Okay, so I practice West African derived spiritual tradition called Ifa. And one of the deities in this system is called Eshu. Eshu is in charge of the word. He's in charge of meaning. And he's also identified as the trickster.
Mm.
So
Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
so the idea that words are a trick is really fundamental to this understanding. So I ask for help from Eshu. I ask for help from other deities. These days, I have been meeting with other people online. I am not so much the kind of person who would go to cafes to write, but this is like enough interaction and then enough withdrawal. We talk for like 15 minutes and then we mute and just go about our business. and then check in again. So it's that sort of social involvement withdrawal that I find very fruitful. I guess when I get into the flow, I really get into it though, because I was told by someone, Tempest Bradford, she was staying nearby, and I faced the window onto a balcony. Apparently, she was out there dancing and, trying to get my attention, and I was just typing away. I don't know where I was, Madagascar, somewhere
Yeah.
else.
You were off in that flow. That's really beautiful. When, the flow state is, kind of every creative's like yummy, but also in this world of, kind of quick and AI and whatnot, there is an element of struggle that happens in that block. And when you enter that state, what gets you through it?
Oh, are you talking about like writer's block?
Maybe writer's block, or it's like, sure, or it's, you're wrestling with a word and you're not sure which one goes there. It's just these moments where it's not quite flow, and
Yeah.
it takes a little effort. What gets you through those moments?
Distraction, actually. So, if someone is advertising a writing retreat and they say, you'll love it, there's no connection with the internet, that is not for me. I actually, yesterday, I was working on a project. Just briefly, I had written something with a more academic tone, and I was trying to revise it to sound more like a self-help book. And I came
Oh.
across this phrase, and I was like, Holy Mother of God, how am I ever going to make that less academic? Let
Mm.
me see if I can find the phrase. But I gave myself absolutely no grace there. I was like, I am absolutely balking at this particular writing puzzle. How do I
Mhm.
de-academicize or academicize the sentence? Its connotative meanings accord much more strongly with that kind of power than with the kind seen as power over anything. Okay. And I'm just like, so I went to Blue Sky, I went to social media, and just that moment of like lifting myself away from the problem
Mhm.
gave me the perspective that I needed to go back and, you know, muddle through it. And I also had the benefit of other people giving me their solutions, which, I didn't really need, but I needed to ask. That's so weird, but it's
Yeah,
true.
just put it out in community. Just kind of have that space where there's that connection again.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that
Ned,
what
what
you
were you
were?
gonna say?
That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
exactly what I was gonna say. I think we have a mind meld, Kira. Exactly.
It's one of the things I enjoy about you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing so much with your process. There was a kind of one other thing I was curious about, and is there, I'm sure there's many, but was there a time that you worked through the hard part and you surprised yourself? Or, was there a surprise moment in your writing?
There are surprise moments in my writing. Usually I'm surprised when like a story is done. I write the last
Ooh.
line and I'm like, oh, that's the end of the story. I also get surprised by the actions of my characters sometimes. And again, this is controversial. There are writers who are like, you are in control of those characters. You are the one you're telling them what to do, you're telling them what to say. It's all you. But other people are like, no, no, the characters have their own volition, their own desires and needs. And I had a character that, as far as I was concerned, this was like a nerd, right? She wears glasses, she gets A's. And during one scene I was writing, she's like, okay, now I'm going to go play softball. Like,
Mhm.
what? You are not playing softball. You are a nerd. But the softball turned out to be important to the story. So
Uh,
yeah, I get surprised,
Interesting.
but not by anything that I am throwing myself against. It's just perks up.
Just kind of what comes out of that flow, what comes out of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a fruitful conversation, Nisi, and your insight and your writing and your influence on this generation of writers is extraordinary. I did have one final question for you, which I'm sure you won't be able to answer comprehensively, but we can try, which is, you're a science fiction writer. You look into the future a bit. Sometimes you look into the retro past, as you said. Where's the future taking us now? Are there reasons to hope? Are there reasons to despair? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there are reasons to hope. And my hope lies in the wider community understanding that we've been through hell before, and we're going through hell now, as far as I'm concerned. And it's time to rely on previous lessons. That's all. And to cling to community. Really important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective.
It's the perspective of a 70-year-old.
Well, and we value it, and again, from our community to yours, thank you for sharing what you've done today.
You're welcome.
You can find out more about any of these news items and hear the complete interview on the extended premium version of our podcast at humanintelligence.news. Today's episode was produced by Ned Hayes and engineered by Muhammad Adnan. Our analog-only human-themed music was created for the Human Intelligence podcast by Josh Pinkston of Nature and Spirit. This episode, and every episode, is brought to you by the Human Intelligence Institute team. Thanks for listening to today's episode. As always, this episode is available online at humanintelligence.news.